everyone, it's Andy from Hobby Headquarters. Today we're going to be building a new diorama, and this new diorama is going to be a bridge scene crossing a small little river somewhere in Europe. I've got in mind this Stormgeschütz B that I built up from Tamiya a while back. But this diorama will be a generic one that you'll be able to use any type of vehicle. We're using this just kind of as a placeholder to give us a little bit of size and scale. Now, I haven't done many dioramas recently, but I absolutely love building dioramas. It's one of my favorite things to do. Once you get a vehicle built, or any number of vehicles built, it's always cool to put it into a scene, to really make that thing come alive and tell a little bit of a story beyond it. So this will actually be the first of a few dioramas. They won't be all in a row. We're going to be building some regular model kits that I've got coming in very soon. So all that stuff will come in. But what I've done is I went to the lumber store and we picked up some 12-inch, some higher grade pine. And I had these cut up. I cut them up to 18 by 12, and then I routed all the edges on them. So we're going to be doing a whole line of dioramas about the 12 to 18 inch range. Now, what I've done is I've also accumulated a bunch of other product that we're going to be using, especially for this video, but it also will transfer over to all the other videos as well. And that'll be the pink foam that you can get at the hardware store. It's actually an insulation foam that people use around the house, but it's great for doing diorama work. Very lightweight, very easy to cut. And actually what I've done is I've cut these sheets right now to fit the lip on all of these diorama pieces here. So we're going to be able to stack them up because we're going to make kind of a high hill. We'll explain that in a little bit there. We also went ahead and got some of over here in this country we have Gorilla Glue. It's a glue that'll basically glue anything together, and it's water activated, works great on the foam. We also have a bunch of products from Woodland Scenic using the water product, plus Mod Podge and liquid adhesive glue, spray glue, plus all the other little tools. This is another tool that I would definitely recommend that if you're going to be doing diorama work is a scale ruler, because I like to do everything in the 35th scale range, and that's because that's the majority of what I build. So there is a marking on here for 35th scale, so you can get an idea that when you're laying out the diorama, is it proper? I mean, you don't want a bridge that's only going to be like just a couple feet. You want to make it proper to scale. So if you can get a hold of a scale ruler like this, it'll make things a lot easier, especially when you're doing trees as well. Now, I ordered up a whole bunch of a new product. I shouldn't say new to me, I should say, of trees that I've seen a friend of mine that I know on YouTube there, Luke Townend, a fabulous diorama builder. He does a lot of stuff with trains. Definitely recommend going on his YouTube channel, Luke Townend. Fabulous diorama maker, and he's inspired me to go out and do some stuff like this, but for 35th scale military dioramas. So very excited about doing this stuff. I've got all the product ready to go, so let's get started on it. I'm Chandler.
And I'm Ashley.
We're from Elton, Kentucky.
Let's get started.
First thing I thought I would do is kind of explain the process and how we're going to lay this out and what we came up with. Now you can see we have our 12-inch by 18-inch board already cut and routed out. One thing I will point out to you too, I've gone ahead and actually this is the one we're going to be using. I've gone ahead and stained all the outside edges right here. So when we put the foam on it, all of this will be decorated, so we just have to masking tape over it. But for right now, we're just going to use this other blank in its place. Now what I've done is I've cut 2 sheets of the foam product to lay down right here, and that's going to be our main 2 sides of the hill with a big deep cut in there for the waterway. And then I also wanted to put a little bit taller hill on this side, so I've taken a couple of other little pieces and kind of built them up. So what we're planning on doing is this will be kind of the road going through the middle of our diorama. This will be the edge of the river. This will actually all be bridge right here. And I'm using our scale lumber that I've got some of these. And this is another great thing having the scale ruler. What I've used on this is this actually works out to a 10 by 10 post. 10 inches by 10 inches. So you can give you an idea how big the lumber would be. So the bridge will start right about here. These will be the 2 beams going across. then the bridge itself will start being planked going this direction. And what I'm thinking about doing, move that for a minute, is probably only making just the smallest little bit of the river bed, or the river's edge on this side. So it'll be something like this. So we'll get, all this will be a down slope to the actual river, which will probably be about in that middle right there. So it's always good to obviously come up with a pretty good plan and then lay it out to see how it's going to look scale-wise. So there'll be still enough room that the vehicle doesn't have to be on the bridge, because this could be the type of diorama that the vehicle's pulling up to a old wooden bridge in Europe, and if they're unsure, is this bridge going to actually hold this vehicle? It's I believe a 22-ton vehicle, so it's got to be a decent size. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and glue all the foam pieces together. Okay, we've got the sides of the bank of the river, as well as the little hill in the road, all glued into place. We went ahead first and completely masked off all the edge of our base here, just to keep it clean and keep anything from forming on it. Now, I used a razor saw like this to carve the edge of the foam. Makes it very, very easy, cuts into it. Show you, left this one little part uncut, and you can see you can just cut right into it and break off the pieces. So a razor saw works really well. This part right here, I wasn't thinking straight, I guess, because I glued the entire piece of bottom foam down and before I cut it. So I noticed it right away, pulled it up. We just let this stuff dry right here. Actually, it'll probably even work out for the best, because now it's all uneven on the bottom here, and it'll be something for the plaster to grab onto. Because sometimes when the plaster is just on bare wood, the plaster over time, if you flex it at all, it could pop free of it. But with all this rugged, jagged stuff, that plaster is going to stick really well. Now, what I plan on doing is building up, and I've actually made a framework of one of them right here, is a like a block base for the bottom of the bridge. And what we did with that was we just used some precast brickwork, and I happen to use some big like gray brick here, and you can cut it very easily with a razor saw. And when it comes to the edge over here, I've got the other side starting to form up. What you do is, after you cut it, you can take your razor saw and scribe in the other bricks on there, and you can chip them away a little bit, kind of wiggling them back and forth to get that kind of cut rock look. And it's pretty easy, and just keep chiseling away on it. And when you get done, you'll have something that looks like this, and that will get glued right into place there. And because we're going to put that block work, now it's sticking out kind of far, we want it to actually go a little bit further into the embankment. And then once that gets put on there, we're going to have these these would work out to be a 16-inch board that is going to be the main support of the bridge, and it's going to rest on top of these pieces right here. So I'm going to carve into the side of the block, marking it off where we need to go, because I want that to be pushed a little bit further inward. And we'll do that on both sides. And then in the middle of the bridge, we will have our thick posts that will be holding up the middle here. So I'm going to go ahead and keep carving all that up. Now, we aren't going to be doing any of the bridge work actually until we put the plaster down. But I wanted to kind of show you what we're going to be doing with that. And I'll carve all this out. And then next step we'll do is start putting on the plaster. Okay, we've got our cutouts for our stone supports, and we've just fitted the stone support in there temporarily right now. I've also decided to make a little bit of a curve in the river, so we added a little bit more foam here and then cut the corner off here to give it a little bit more excitement to the piece. Now, we're going to be using a couple of different products. Primarily, we're going to be using Sculptamold. Sculptamold is going to be the main plaster base that we're going to use. And Sculptamold is a plaster with like a cellulose inside of it, so it clumps, but it stays together really well. We're also going to be using some lightweight hydrocal, and lightweight hydrocal is going to be what we're going to use in our rock molds. We might make a few little rock molds that we'll put into the edges here. And finally, we're going to use a little bit of Woodland Scenics plaster cloth. And same thing, it's a piece of cloth that's impregnated with a little bit of plaster on it. And we're going to use that to clean up all the sides. What we're going to do right now is mix up a batch of Sculptamold and start building up the foundation. As you can see, we have the first layer of the Sculptamold as well as the plaster cloth right down in here. I had a little ripple in the front of the plaster cloth, so I've sanded that out, and we're going to put a second layer down in here. We also use plaster cloth on the road bed as well, and you can see it's still a little bit of the texture on there, but we are going to put some more hydrocal, or actually probably even Sculptamold on top of that. I just find that when you use the sheet, it sticks much better and makes a much better surface to lay down for it, and you can still see a little bit needs to be touched up right here. So we'll be putting a little bit more on in a few minutes, but right now the inside of the riverbed and parts in here are not dry yet. So what I thought would be a good opportunity is to lay down the first set of beams for the actual bridge. So we've gone and taken an X-Acto knife and notched out the corner in here to get the first beam to fit and hopefully line up pretty straight and even with it. Then what we're going to do now too is we're taking some of our posts, and I've cut them to size to kind of get an idea of what's going to go. And then we've also started taking some of the center supports, and I've numbered those. So this is number 2, and that will slide right up along inside here, and we'll be able to attach all this. Now this is all just loose fit right now. I find it's better to build the bridge in place for me, for this such a big bridge, because if we don't get it just right, we can get a really uneven bridge. So the way this is going to be is we're going to have some beams on either side like this, with a center support going down the middle of each one of them here. And while like I was telling you, the riverbed is wet, we've pushed the beam into the what would be a mud later on. And we'll also have a center support down the middle here as well that we'll use some more of this, and then there'll be some cross members tying all of these together. So a nice secure bridge, and then finally we'll have some more stuff on top into the rail and all that other stuff. But for right now, I wanted to cut all of these pieces to size and shape, so that way we know how it's going to fit, and once we put the other layer of plaster on, we won't be going anywhere near this area to keep it from growing and not allowing the boards to fit in. And even if we did get a little bit in that area, we'd still be able to go in there with our X-Acto and cut it out just like we did there. So I'm going to go ahead and finish all the center boards that go in through the middle here, and we will let the rest of the plaster dry completely, and then we'll go put our second layer on, sand it all up, and then we can start on the terrain. Thought I would just show you real fast too, since we're doing the centerpiece. It's very, very simple, obviously, to get the height of the board. So we just lay our cross members down, take our tall support, push it down into the soft plaster, squeeze those tight right there, and then taking a pencil, draw the line on it, and we have our area where we need to cut on that. So you can see it's going to be a fairly sturdy bridge. And I think our little tank that's about to cross it shouldn't have any problem of it collapsing. What I've done now is we've taken our razor saw and then cut a groove into the side of the wall here, and then I've taken my stacked stone and just cut a little four high retaining wall that we're going to glue into place here. We'll have to put a couple of multi-walls to finish off the whole thing, make it a little retaining wall. What I've also done is I've also cut a strip of wood that is going to represent the top of the deck here, and we're going to use this as like a sacrificial piece, because we want to put this at the very end, and then we want to have our dirt, basically, part of the road, meet right up to it, so there's no groove going through. So we can put this piece right here, hold it into place, and then as we put our second layer of the Sculptamold on here, we will fill in all these gaps. We'll let this stay right here, and then after the stuff is all dry, we'll pull that out and put a new board in. That'll be clean, and then we'll be able to stain like we did on everything else. But you get the general idea of how it's going together. I've also gone ahead and put another piece of plaster cloth right here, and we'll fill it up with a little hydrocal and get that really smooth, and then we can sand it and paint it later on. So with that in mind, we are going to leave two little like ruts down the middle here. So I'll slightly build up the plaster in the middle and on the edge, and as if vehicles were driving up and down. And of course we're also going to do that on the other side of this as well. I've taken all of the boards that we're going to need to make up the bridge, and to make sure everything lines up perfectly, we got to the very end over here, and as you can see, we have a little bit of a weird shape. So we want to basically take a scrap piece of the same size lumber and just drag it down the line here till you plow out all that extra plaster, and then we should be able to take the final board and push it into shape there, and then just using any of the excess that we have, we can kind of fill in the little crack where the dirt meets the wooden part of the bridge, and just keep blending that back and forth, trying not to get too much of it on the board because we are going to pull those out to weather them, but while in this state it actually cleans up pretty good off the wood. So you can see now, obviously we're going to keep these all straight and stuff, but I wanted to lay them all out to make sure that we didn't have an odd piece of wood show up at the very last like a little sliver. So now that we've got that the whole line up, we're going to go ahead and finish off. Hopefully you can also see we've made the two little depressions from where wheels and carts or trucks or whatever would have went on this road, and left a little berm in the middle. We've also put in our retaining wall and backfilled it, and I'm just going through the process now of cleaning off all the brick. I did use a little bit of the plaster to fill in the gap where the two chunks of brick are going to meet, and while it's still in this wet form, it actually comes off pretty easily, so we'll be able to clean this up really well. And we're going to paint all this as well, so it's kind of just the gray color is the way it came to me, so we might even do gray brick, but you can get an idea how the whole little scene is starting to come about. Now we're going to make up some handrails for our bridge. And what I'm going to do first is to go over with a file and kind of grind down all the edges so we don't have really super sharp edges on anything. And this will give the appearance of age a little bit on the bridge. And I've already glued up one of them right here using our scale ruler to measure out the exact size. And we're just going to use some planks right here to go across the top, and then it's approximately about a foot down, 1.5 feet in scale. And it'll just fit right onto the side of the bridge once we get it glued up. And here we are. We've let the plaster dry now. Now we do have to do a little bit of sanding and things like that on it, but what I thought I would do is show you how the railing will fit into place. It'll go just like this, and just like this on the other side. We finished up sanding the plaster and getting it the way we want. I've removed most of the boards in the bridge, and now we are just going over all of the white plaster with a earth brown color. And this part doesn't really matter what color brown you use. This is mainly just to hide all of the white plaster that's going on there. And I add a little extra water to the Tamiya paint that I'm using on this, and that is just so it'll soak in to all the plaster and dye it a little bit deeper than just surface. Now, as you can see, we've painted the entire diorama except for inside here. Those are not going to get seen at all. They get covered over. We painted just the flat earth for all of the ground areas. I did paint a darker brown color for the river area. And then what I've also done is I've painted all of the brickwork a dark gray. And after I sprayed it down with Tester's dull coat, and that is going to seal in that gray paint job. And the reason we're going to do that is because afterward we're going to do a lot of dry brushing of multicolors on there, and we don't want that paint to soak into the brick. We want it to be sealed and lay on top of it so they don't blend together. We'll actually get a true dry brushing. Now you may also notice too, I've gone ahead and I pulled off all the tape and didn't think that the red color that I had put on there looked as good as I like the black a lot better. So we went and painted the entire base, including the side walls here, all black after we sanded them smooth. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take Mod Podge and slightly watered down, and we got it in a cup here, and we're going to apply it to all of the ground areas, and fairly liberally too, but wanting to keep it off of any of the brickwork. And then after we get all of this completely saturated, go ahead and use some sanded grout, And I'll show you the box right there. And we put it inside a little shaker, and that is just so we can distribute it evenly over the top. And we're just going to start going over all the areas that we put the Mod Podge on. You'll also notice too, we didn't put any of it on the river itself. We want to keep that separate. Any that falls on here, we will just go ahead and vacuum up afterward. And also, you might also notice that the entire thing is inside a box, and that is because this can be a little bit messy. So would highly recommend putting it in a box. That way you can shake it all off, vacuum up the rest, and then just throw the box out with everything inside of it. So I'm going to go over this whole thing and make sure we put a nice even coat over the entire piece. And once I'm done with that, we're going to take a spray bottle with Mod Podge and about 2 to 1 with water, and we're going to spray down the entire top of it to seal in all of the grout. Now that we've let the grout dry for a while, we can now go back and fit all of our bridge pieces back into place, and they kind of just pop right into position where they're supposed to. Now I did take the time to number each one of the boards too, so I knew where each one of them would fit back in, because we did obviously plan it a certain way, and this one should slide right here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and glue these into place, and then we have all of our other boards that will line up and fill the entire top. And I'm going to go down the line and start gluing all those into place. Now with the bridge completely secure and the railing attached using wood glue, we are now going to take the colors XF59 Desert Yellow, XF60 Dark Yellow, and XF64 Red Brown. And starting with the red brown, we're going to start to create some shadows. So any places there are any undercuts on the terrain, also down the center where the wheels or tracks in this particular case would have, from years of just being worn, would wear that darker rut in the middle there. And you just keep working the brown back and forth, and then following it up by using like the dark yellow and the desert yellow. And you can vary this depending on what type of terrain you want, just using any of the earth tones, but always starting from dark and then going to light. And you'll even mist over a little bit of the light shades over the darker parts, even on the road bed, and you'll see it starts to blend and fade into itself. Train mostly done, we can start working on the bridge. And actually we're going to end up using these same 3 colors that we did on the terrain, but now with a little bit more emphasis on the red brown. We want the bridge to have a little bit of a worn tone. And when you're doing the airbrushing, as you can see here, you want to try to keep the pattern going in the same direction that the boards are going on the bridge. And try to vary it between light and dark, and then of course not to miss any of the railings and up in the undercuts, and trying to get as even a job as possible. Now what we're doing here is we've blended in the 3 different brown tones together for probably about 10-15 minutes, just trying to get it to look like a nice even pattern. And now I'm taking XF19 Sky Gray, and we're creating a path down the center where like road wheels or tracks or anything else would have been for years, and it kind of gives a grayish tone to the wood. Plus we're also going to mist gray over all of the brown parts too, and that kind of gives it a sun bleach kind of worn effect to the bridge. Thumbtack and a straight piece of lumber here, and just start poking 2 holes in each one of the boards as we go down the line in multiple rows, and that is going to give us the effect of having nail holes inside the bridge. I'm applying a little ballast to the edge of the river banks, and that's just to give us a little bit of a rocky effect. Once we get the pieces brushed into the right position we want, we're going to add a little mixture of 50% Mod Podge, 50% water, with an eyedropper, just to get everything to stick into place, and that is so when we add the water they won't float away. Now we're going to build some of this like thicket type bushes here, and what we're going to use is a little bit of the poly fiber from Woodland Scenics, and you kind of just take it and stretch it into the approximate shape that you want of it and figure out how it's going to go. Let me take a little less than this, and then what we're going to do is we're going to spray it with a sprayable glue, a craft glue spray adhesive. And then once we have the spray adhesive, which I just did off camera because I want to do it outside there, we're going to use a little bit of the Super Leaf Fine Foliage. We've got multiple colors, and just going to start layering up on there. And then mixing some of the colors, a little bit of light to give it some of the dead stuff that might appear up on top. And even some real light stuff up on there. That's the sprinkle. And what we'll do is we'll let this dry for a little while, and then we'll fit it into place over on the other side of the riverbed. And now that that's dry, we've kind of shaped it into the proper shape. And we'll just use a little scenic glue to attach it right to the riverbank. Before we decide to do any more of the scenery around there, I've decided to go ahead and put the water in. Now, I'm trying a completely new experiment here, and I went ahead and done it already. What I've done is I've taken hot glue, and I've done a couple of layers back and forth and built up a little dam to hold our realistic water from Woodland Scenics. Usually you put tape and stuff, but I've had so many problems where tape leaked over time, and because the stuff dries fairly slow, I thought this would be a really good idea. We'll see if it actually works out, because the actual hot glue soaks into every little nook and cranny and should seal it up. So I've put the dam on both sides, and now we can just slowly start to pour in a thin layer of it. This stuff is all dried right now and shouldn't hopefully float to the top, and if it does we can pull out any pieces, but we're going to go ahead and just start pouring the first couple of layers. Now you don't want to pour too deep of a layer to start. It's better to build up with a couple of layers, and also this product will look milky until it dries, and it usually takes about, depending on how thick you pour it, about 8 to 12 hours to dry. Okay, the water is going to take probably 8 to 12 hours to set up just for the first layer. So what I thought I would do is start working on some of the trees that we're going to put on our diorama. And what I'm going to use for the trees is this company called Super Trees from Scenic Express. And you get a big giant box of them in there. And basically what it is, it's some kind of natural sea grass or something like that that really looks like a tree. And you have to do a little cleanup. You have to pull off some of these little leaves, the bigger leaves that are way out of scale on it. But what I'll do with these is we'll take some that we like this one right here I've chosen. I'm going to spray the entire thing with brown spray paint. Then we're going to mist on a little gray spray paint to kind of give it the look, the way a bark would look like. And then using the exact same way we did those little hedges, we're going to spray the thing with a spray adhesive, and then using the leaf packs, which I'll show you the darker ones right here, we sprinkle the leaves right into place, make multiple layers, and when you're done, you'll get something that looks like this. Let me move this out of the way so you can see it a little better. And there's one of the trees. And I think they look really, really good that way. And now this is going to be a smaller tree. We've got some bigger ones and some smaller ones. And looking at them in scale, this one's about a 13 to 14 foot tree. I've got a few that I've pulled out of the box. They're going to be like 30 to 35 foot trees. So smaller scale trees, but our diorama is not very large, so we don't want to put some ridiculously large tree in the corner and just make it look way out of scale. So I'm going to build up a couple of these right now, and we'll show you what they look like once they're done. So here's the tree unpainted. Next you will see it with just a coat of brown paint sprayed on. And finally with a light mist coat of gray sprayed over the entire thing. Now I went and did these things outside because of the smell of the paint. Now I'm just applying the spray adhesive on, and we can start to sprinkle the leaf effect all over it, mainly from the top down. It makes a nice layering effect on it. You're going to use different colors. And finally, once we're done with all this too, if we can always spray the entire tree with like some different color greens with our airbrush to kind of mist it on and kind of blend some of the colors together. But I think overall these turn into some very, very nice looking trees once they're done. Now I want to add some grass to the side of this hill, and we're going to just use a little Mod Podge right out of the bottle and just kind of blot it around, making it kind of a random. Have the glue down, I'm going to use the Knock Tall Grass, and using our static grass applicator we're going to apply it over the entire thing. Put it on a little bit heavy, and then once the grass dries, or the glue dries I should say, we will go ahead and shake off all the excess. So you'll see there's quite a bit of excess standing out right now. Some of it is laying down, some of it is not, but after it's completely dry we'll blow off all the excess. I'm going through the back of the diorama, and we're applying gloss Mod Podge to the river, and we're going to apply it on in streaking effect, and then we're going to use our airbrush to blow across the Mod Podge to make ripples. And the Mod Podge is white right now, but the gloss will dry completely clear and shiny and look like water. And I did have a video portion of the entire front being done, but for some reason that did not record properly. And also too, if you get it anywhere you don't want, it's just like white glue. You can wipe it up with a paper towel. But I'm kind of showing right here how by using the airbrush we can get nice ripple effects with it. I've gone ahead and poked some holes into our scenery and just attached our 4 trees, putting a taller one and a couple shorter ones up front here. We're going to really give some height to our diorama. Also, I thought it was a good idea to just put one over on the other side, kind of break it up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of a lighter gray and brushing most of it off on a brush. We want to put a little highlights just lightly on all of our brickwork. And this is going to give it a weathered effect on all the stone, as well as down in through here. Now, you also may notice too that the rippling effect is starting to dry. It's not completely dry yet. All those white parts will eventually completely turn clear. And actually what I might do is, I really like that effect. It actually looks like pretty fast moving water. We'll probably go over and dry brush some white caps just to the peaks of the little areas right there, just to give it the effect of fast moving water. Also, now I'm going to take a little Vallejo pigment, the light sienna, and this is going to act kind of a dust effect. And we're just going to start putting some around some of where the boards meet. You can even use it as a dust layer down the middle to make it a little bit more subdued, or actually should say in these track areas. And this can kind of blend together some of the colors we have. We can also use some other colors like a light dust effect, which we'll try right now. And there we did. We spent a few minutes just blending all of those weathering pigments together on it there. We didn't go very heavy on it, just lightly. Kind of dulls things down and blends it together in through here. Also, you'll be able to see the full height of the back tree that I was talking about from this angle. And probably it takes about another 4 to 6 hours for all of the Mod Podge to completely dry in there. And then we can decide if we need to put another coat on, although I think it's going to be good. It looks like it has some pretty decent ripples on it right now. And all we would have to do after that, if we decide to, is just to do a little white dry brushing on the tops of all that, just to give it a little bit more of that rough water again. Well, here we go, guys. Here is our completed model, and I really like the way it turned out. I like the height of the trees with the river. Now, you may notice right here that the river still has that white stuff inside of it there, the foam, which I wanted to duplicate. The weird thing is I've let this dry now for 2 days, and it remained like that. So, happy accident. I'm happy with it. I like the white. It gives the effect of moving water. Well, I have to say I had an absolute blast building this this diorama. It's small and compact enough that we can put it inside our display cases, or display any of our nice vehicles, which put this one right here to give you an idea of size. Now remember, I built this as a generic diorama. I didn't plan on any particular vehicle to be constantly on there. I build them up to show you the scenery and how to do the realistic scenery. If I was going to make this vehicle was going to be a permanent attachment on that, what we would have done is we would have put the plaster in here a little thicker, pushed the tracks down, and that's something that you might want to do if you're going to do it. This, like I said, is just going to be a generic one. We can put any number of vehicles on there, or a cart, or even modern day stuff, like our Type 16. You can see that could just go right across the bridge. Where it is in the world, who knows on that. This terrain can be any kind of place that's got trees and grass and rivers in it. Now, building a diorama like this does take a decent amount of work and quite a bit of time, and that's one of the reasons that you haven't seen many build videos come out in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and that is because I've been concentrating primarily on this build. And I think the time and effort are definitely worth the results that we got out of this. I'm really happy with the trees. The water, like I said, it was weird that it turned out like that, but I'm thrilled with it. I love the white part. And actually using the hot glue turned out pretty good too. The only thing I'd probably do in the future is down here on the bottom is maybe put some kind of piece of plastic or something to get the hot glue to be a little bit smoother. I thought about cutting it or sanding it, but it's a minor thing. We're just gonna leave it the way it is. But the top edge matches perfectly, as the rough water. So that turned out really well. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you a quick couple of outside scenes to see what natural shadows put on all this stuff. Take a look at it that way. So we're going to do a quick little 360 around the entire diorama outside. Not going to stay very long outside. It's about 110 degrees with humidity in Phoenix today, so a little on the toasty side. But you can see with natural shadows how it really makes things pop on the diorama. So I want to thank you guys as always for watching, and please stay tuned because we have many more videos coming.